Well, it's good to be here. Good to be back. I decided I felt really led. We're doing this 9 weeks masterclass on the Shift Basic Training, dealing with emotion and how to deal with, how to walk through the process of renewing your mind and so on and so forth. And we're doing that locally, so we're not doing it live. But I felt led to do a live video today. And we're going to add this on as a bonus. You guys just get to receive it where you're at. And hopefully it'll encourage you to get the whole series. This can be a standalone teaching, but I really believe it goes well with the shift training that we are doing that will help us identify kind of why we do the things we do, why other people react the way they do, and some of the root issues that keep people bound in victim mindsets. And so today we're going to be talking about 2 different victim mindsets and how it relates to mixing it with religion or hyper spirituality, however you want to call it. And so we're going to be dealing with narcissism and codependency. And the reason why I picked these 2 is because in all the ministry that I do with people, these 2 seem to be the prominent in the way they interact in their togetherness, and kind of 2 people are usually drawn together, one narcissistic and one codependent, and they are able to keep the drama going, keep feeding it, kind of protect each other from entering into the truth. And so I want to hit on these. These are also 2 of my own past experience, where I was very codependent on God, codependent on the church, on pastors, on people. Then I went opposite into narcissistic and in my supposed independence and proof that me and God can do it on our own. And I just feel it'll be beneficial to you to kind of see both sides. And what I'm hoping to do is, following this video, maybe tomorrow, maybe even later today when my wife gets home, she's also got a message on her heart where we're going to follow up this one with another one on the difference between blaming and taking responsibility. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what I'm going to share with you today. So this is a basic overview. I'm not going to get into a lot of depth on the mechanics of these, just an overview, because our shift training will go into a lot of the depths of emotional belief systems and why we believe those things, and causes and effects and reactions, and what we draw and what we repel, and all of those types of things. So if this is something up your alley, you're dealing with somebody that's narcissistic, maybe it's a spouse, and you just keep going round and round no matter what you do. There's a possibility you also might be codependent. And if not, then you might get some tools here that might help you get out of this web that just entangles us so quickly. All right. And so please like and share this video if you know somebody that's dealing with codependency or narcissism, or a combination of both. And I think you can have multiple victim mindsets. And the reason I call this a victim mindset is because victim mindset is really just an overview in which we have interpreted our childhood a specific way. We've gone through trauma, and each person is going to adapt according to their environment, according to how their mind is wired, and specific situations in the household that can cause them to kind of manifest these traits later on in life. So I did 2 posts on Facebook, and I'm not going to read the whole post, but I just want to read the overall definition I placed here. And we'll start with narcissism. Okay. And the article I found online was about symptoms and signs. And this is what it says here. It says, narcissism is extreme self-involvement to the degree that it makes a person ignore the needs of those around them. All right. While everyone may show occasional narcissistic behavior, and by the way, we're going to get into that, true narcissists frequently disregard others or their feelings. They also do not understand the effect that their behavior has on other people. Okay. It's important to note that narcissism is a trait, but it can also be part of a larger personality disorder. Not every narcissist has narcissistic personality disorder. As narcissism is a spectrum, people who are at the highest end of the spectrum are those that are classified with the personality disorder, but others still with narcissistic traits may fall on the lower end of the narcissistic spectrum. So basically, what we're seeing here in narcissistic behavior, and especially those on the receiving end of a narcissist, is if you're with somebody that's narcissistic, and again, I just want to do away here with the labels that we've known. The last thing we want to do is call a narcissist a narcissist. All it's going to do is confirm to them that they have to continue to protect themselves and focus in on their needs and not yours. And it will just strengthen that behavior. So whatever you do, do not get stuck in your own trigger, throwing around these labels to justify your own pain and bitterness at what's happened to you. Okay. It's good to see you, Pamela. I'm glad you're here. And Nizam, it's good to see you. And so I know we have others that will be coming on as well as we're going live here on Facebook and YouTube. But so be aware that we can use all of these things as labels, and they have been used as labels, or we can find a language through these words to understand what's going on inside of us and utilize it as tools to get out of it. So we don't want to use this as a stereotype out of our own prejudice. We want to use this and say, okay, hey, look, if I don't have language to what I'm actually going through inside of me, then I'm just going to call it a thing. Well, there's this thing I'm feeling. I don't know what it is, but God's going to heal me from it. Okay. So how are you going to know when you're healed from the thing you cannot even identify? And so words are important to kind of target and identify what we're feeling, what we're going through, so we can work through it. Words were never meant to be used as labels to throw people away or put them in a box so that we can tell them what they are and get rid of them. Okay, so I'm not coming from the standpoint of the average worldly stereotype of labels. I'm coming from a place of using words to identify issues so we can get to the root and deal with it and move on and help people and help ourselves. Okay. So one of the things that you want to see here, and this is where I really want to go, is a narcissist is somebody who it's all about them. Okay. And it can be all about them, even in their proclamation of them saying, I don't even care about my own needs. But in the not caring about their own needs, they're also not caring about the needs of others. There's different kinds of, obviously, different sides of narcissism. There are those that maybe grew up and with a silver spoon and everything was handed to them, and they have this superior mindset, this grandiose mindset, where they should just be served and everything should be handed to them, and that's how their needs are met. But you also have the opposite side, which is those that grew up with a lot of neglect and nothing was ever given to them, and so now they've got to fight for their rights in those areas. And so all of us have narcissistic behavior in us. All of us do. There isn't one person that isn't narcissistic somewhere. And that's because we all have broken places in our life that came from childhood trauma, and experiences that kept us bound in it. So let me just say this. Narcissists start out as children. All children are narcissists. Okay. It's very important to understand. A child in a crib screaming to get their diaper changed and to get fed is narcissistic behavior. Okay? Is it wrong for a child to do that? No, that's what children do. But the issue is the emotional experience that child has, feeling alone, feeling helpless, will eventually translate into a mindset if the parents do not care for that child in such a way to not only meet the needs until they get old enough to cognitively understand, that yes, their needs are met, they're loved, but then it needs to be directed on a child learning to meet the needs of others in a healthy way with boundaries, and, different aspects like that as well, And so if we're not taught team concepts, doing things together, learning to play with other kids, learning to get along, helping others when they fall down, helping them up. And if parents aren't teaching their children to be community focused, and that our needs, the difference between our place of independence and our place of interdependence in love and giving of one another, then they will grow up with these extremes of either a superior complex that, rolls into town and expects everybody to meet their needs without any relational connection, so that once their need is met, they can just write you off and go their way, all in the name of whatever indoctrination they've used to justify themselves. And we'll get into the spiritual side of that in a minute. But, you can also have the opposite extreme, where people can roll into your life and, they don't believe they're good enough at their base level, but now they've covered that up with spiritual truths that are true, that you are complete and perfect, that you can hear from the Holy Spirit personally. But now they've taken that, put it on these victim mindsets, and are now using it not to face the victim mindset, but to avoid it and to justify the victim mindset, to still try to get what they want or appear to measure up by doing it on their own without other people. So narcissism starts out in childhood trauma. It's either the absence of good things and understanding, the need for community connection, or it's everything being handed to you. And so when you're an adult, you expect the same thing. So, this is something I think will help us. Again, I'm keeping this simple. Let me just read you a little bit more off my post. People who show signs of narcissism can often be very charming and charismatic. Usually what happens is wherever they have been rejected in relationship, in, maybe critiqued in their, the way in which they implement their life or apply things in the natural, and how many a times people that are narcissistic and codependent are very gifted people. And what they'll do is they'll hone in on their gifts, on their ability to be charming and win you over, to kind of make up for the selfish side of them that's been seen in others and judged in others. And so therefore they'll hide that from the person they're trying to get close to. I don't think they're necessarily conscious of this. I think what's happened is they've been condemned in areas of their life. And so to make up and to kind of take up the slack in that and not have to face it, they'll try to overdo in other areas. And so you'll see this happen a lot. And I've seen this happen a lot in ministry as well, is somebody will come in very gifted, very anointed. They have all the right words, but they've got this track record of, behind them of not being able to keep a job, not being able to, have peace in their home, constantly, a trail of broken relationships behind them. And all you'll hear out of them is how everybody hurt them and how they were not heard and how they were taken advantage of. And so it's almost like this gaslighting mentality that says, I can't really see this myself for me. So I'm going to project what I'm doing on everybody around me. It's funny too, because in doing these posts today on Facebook, I actually had to block another person. I wasn't going to respond to them. You're going to find that I'm not going to try to convince you of what I believe and the truths I bring forth. If you're going to come on my Facebook, my videos, and try to use this reverse psychology on me because you're triggered at what I'm saying, just know you're going to be blessed out and blessed off of my page. I won't mess with you. I won't explain myself to you. I ain't got time to play games. So another person that wanted to say, well, brother, I think you're codependent for trying to help people that are dealing with codependency. I'm like, well, that's possible. I could be. I guess the only way to know is to know me and look at my life and my marriage and the people that I'm connected to. That's really the only way you're going to know if what I am saying is to deflect my own codependency to make you look like it, or if I'm truly free from it and now bringing you tools to help you get free from it. The only way you know is to know me and to look at my life. If you don't know me and you assume that, you're probably codependent and narcissistic. So let me just say that right up front. There's my disclaimer. Okay. But I just, I ain't going to respond. It's just, see ya, goodbye. When you're ready to have a real conversation, give me a ring. All right. So narcissistic people can put on a facade of spirituality because underneath they don't believe they can measure up. They're not aware of this. They were aware of it for so long that they finally came to a point where they could not face it anymore. And this is where religion comes in, and spirituality and truths are used to protect the person's narcissism, so they don't have to face themselves. So they have all these reasons and they find all these scriptures to justify this mindset. So, they'll come in, and I've had this multiple times over years. And what's funny is pastors tried to help me with it, and I couldn't see it when I was in it. And so, in my life, I would come to a church because the Father had sent me there. And in my mind, it was, this church really is needing to go to another level. And I know I'm carrying the key to help them go to another level. Now, there's a healthy place of saying, we're all needed for something and every part doing its share. But at that time, I had a lot of rejection. Okay. A lot of feelings of feeling insecure, invalidated in my life. But I wasn't aware of it. I had covered it all up with scriptures and claiming I'm free, I'm whole, I'm complete. If I just confess it long enough and just step out and be those things, I can forget about. My old things have passed away. All things have become new. So that became my demise in that time in my life, where I would come to a church and I'd come in and I'd sit for a bit, and then I'd make an appointment with the pastor to let him know, the apostle is in the building. The Father has sent me. What can I do to help you? And usually I would focus in on the leaders, because it was the leaders that had the issue. Now, did they have issues? Sure they did. So that even justified it more. Okay. But of course, when you're in this narcissistic mindset, you're going to have what's called a fault finding, discerning mentality. So all you're going to discern is what's wrong and what you have come to change. Okay. And that kind of goes a little bit with the savior complex, where you think you're sent to save everybody because you're trying to heal yourself by healing others, and you just end up wounding everybody around you. But I'd come in, and the first thing the pastor would talk about with me is, well, what's your track record with relationships, and how's your marriage? And I've heard that you've already been divorced a couple of times, and you just remarried, and now you're in here and you're ready to go forward in ministry, but I'd like to see some fruit in your life. I'd like to see the proof of everything that's coming out of your mouth. And I wouldn't hear it that way. I would hear, oh, well, yep, Here it is again. This person has been exposed. I can see their wounds. I can see them trying to hide from the truth I'm carrying. And now, I know I'm really sent to help this person. You see how it gets twisted up, because this God syndrome savior mentality in me that's really stemming from a need to be loved, a need to be heard, and a need for structure in my life is being blocked by this ego mentality of narcissism, And so you ever gone to a church and believe you're more spiritual than they are? Okay. All right. Well, these people are just religious and broken. I'm praying for them to come into the freedom I've received. Be careful. Narcissism. Okay. That means somewhere you haven't arrived where you think you've arrived, at least in your mindset, and you're still trying to claim your way there. So that was my experience. So what do you think God's going to send to me when I come out of it? He's going to send to me what? Now, how did I come out of it? Let me give you this. Let me just give you some of the things of how I came out of it. Okay, I didn't come out of it overnight. It took years. And then after I thought I came out of it, it took some more years at other levels. A lot of inner healing, a lot of shift sessions. Back in those days, it was Theophostic Prayer Ministry or Cleansing Streams or Elijah House, which helped in degrees. But I literally had to walk this out by myself. Now, why did I have to walk it out by myself? Well, first and foremost, the church at the time wasn't equipped to deal with any victim mindsets because they didn't believe the mind had any importance. It was all about the spirit. Just throw your mind away. Your mind is just the devil's playground. You don't need a mind. It's all about the spirit. Well, guess what? Your spirit has no place in this dimension except through the lens of your mind. So everything the spirit is carrying in you and through you is going to be perceived through your mind. So you really got to deal with your mind before you can even understand spirit. Because of the lack of understanding of the mind in the church, and because the church believed psychology was witchcraft, when psychology works with spirituality, same with science, because they threw it out of their own narcissistic behavior and their wrath-based, God that wants to burn you in the fires of hell. That in itself is narcissism. They couldn't help me. They couldn't help anybody. So I had to do this on my own. But let me tell you how this helped. Let me give you the pluses of me being thrown away by the church. Yes, it did strengthen my ego and that narcissistic belief system. But eventually I swung the other direction. I began to realize my pride and my arrogance of what if I have been deceived? But now, because I hadn't dealt with the childhood issues in my life, the rejection and all of that, and because remember, I didn't want to face my rejection, so I went extreme that I wasn't. Now that everything's caving in on me, I'm all by myself. Everywhere I go, I'm told that you got a problem, brother. In those days, it's you got a demon, you're a false prophet, you're not of God. And of course, that was narcissistic in the responses to me. But what it did was it flipped me to the opposite side. I began to go into condemnation that, yes, oh, wow, I really wasn't healed of all those things. And now I'm just an utter mess. Maybe I can't get free. So then I went into this codependent place, okay, where, all I'm good for is trying to, is just being a welcome mat for others and meeting their needs, because I'm not really worthy to lead or to be the man of God. And so I began to take the back seat, calling it humility, to serve in the background. But what I ended up doing was becoming codependent on the narcissism of others. Okay. And so I found myself very lonely, doing this on my own. And then I'd go through seasons where I'd flip back and forth. I'd usually get this revelation, God wants to use me and God's with me and God loves me. But I wouldn't take it in the balance of how the Father was revealing it. I would take it and to not have to face again this emotional pain. And it was my way of escaping out of it. So I'd take it to the extreme in my own zeal, and I'd go out and start another ministry. And I'd go out, guns ablazing. I'm going to change the world for Jesus. Right? And so I'm giving that. This is what I walk through. This is why I carry what I carry now. But I had to keep hitting rock bottom over and over again. Everything had to fail, because if it succeeded, and it looked like it would succeed for, a few months, maybe even 6 months, but it had to fail. Fruit that remains is the only fruit of the Spirit. Fruit that's seasonal, that doesn't remain, is the facade of our own making that has to fail. Otherwise, we will stay in that mindset thinking we're free. And so everything has to fight that belief system so we actually come out of it. So be encouraged. All right. Let me give you just the definition here as well from codependency. Okay. Let me just find it here real quick. Codependency is defined as excessive emotional or psychological reliance on a partner, typically one who requires support on account of an illness or addiction. The tie that binds most of us together in this trap called codependency. Now, codependency, what is the root of it? Well, it comes from your childhood experiences. A child may take on inappropriate emotional or household responsibilities in order to survive a traumatic upbringing, which causes the child to neglect their needs for the sake of someone else. And a good basic overview there. So what is it basically saying there? Is that, let's say as a child, you have a parent that's always sick. And so as a child, you don't get to be a child. You have to take on the responsibility of adult, and all you're doing is catering to, the parent that is either, has Alzheimer's, cancer, some medical issue. You are going to your identity is going to get stunted and stuck in that place. And in that, in order to escape that particular experience that was painful for you, when you had to let go of fun and having your own life, and you had to live the life that catered to another, you will despise that, bury that, and then go and do the same thing for everybody else to avoid the initial pain of it. So it's like, oh man, all I did when I was a child was have to take care of that parent, my mom that was sick. She was always sick, and she was sick because for years she drank and partied, and I had to clean up the mess, and I missed out on my childhood. So in order to not think about that, we become codependent to go out and do the very same thing to others. Isn't it? It's an oxymoron how we do it. That's just one side of it. The other side is there could be trauma that happened in your childhood, and yet your needs are not being met, or maybe a sibling. You're trying to protect a sibling because their needs were not met. So now you become the parent to that sibling. And partly you do that not because the sibling has a need that you're trying to meet, but internally you're trying to escape the trauma you endured. And the only way of escape to get your mind out of it is to meet the need of a sibling or another person in the family. And so a lot of times when kids have been forced to be responsible for everything that they shouldn't be responsible for, and there's trauma there, or a lack of affirmation, a lack of identity, they will carry that into their adulthood, and they will basically think that's all they're good for. Now the problem here is they can put themselves in situations with narcissistic behavior in which, no matter how consistent they are by themselves, if they were to live life by themselves, no matter how consistent they are with their kids, the narcissist it's all about themselves. And so they're just another kid that in the family. They're now just another child that's being taken care of. And so what happens is the codependent person keeps enabling the narcissist to continue to do the same things. And when you add spirituality on top of that, or a religious facade, you have the perfect storm. You're going to have a level of battling there, and I've worked with couples like this where, and I'll just give one example where the wife is dealing with codependency in many areas. She's very relational. She stays at home. She takes care of the kids. She's really, hearing spiritual truth. She's getting a level of it. You know what? We need to change, the way our house is going. I can see here that, where talking to her husband, you're selfish. You can't hold down a job. I'm always cleaning up your mess. I'm always taking care of you. There's, the last $20 are being used to go buy him some weed instead of food for the family and for the kids. And so cycle after cycle, he goes and gets a job. He can't keep the job because, God told him to get the job. Now, here's the thing. You mix the spiritual facade in. Mix that in with oneness teachings, okay? Mix that in with a oneness teaching that you're complete, you're perfect, nothing's wrong with you. You don't need anybody to speak into you. Get away from religious people that want to tell you what to do. You're spiritual. You can hear from God directly. Now take that message, which is freeing to those that have healed their history, and put it on a narcissistic person. And what you have is somebody that will never come into freedom if they adopt truth from that platform or foundation or lens. Okay. And what they will do is they will use it to continue their narcissistic behavior. And so they will then claim, God told me to get this job. This is the one. And they'll go work there for a week, maybe two. And then they'll get triggered because something in the job stirred up some of this past pain that they can't identify because they have too many promises from God stacked on top of it to guard them from facing the pain. And now all of a sudden, Spirit told me to quit this job. He said, these people, they don't deserve what I carry. They're just not treating me right. They're not giving me what the Father has promised is mine and who I am. And so they quit, and then they wonder why they have no money. And then they struggle. So what do? Well, they go to social media. But they don't just go to social media with the mindset that they've actually been living out in private. They go to social media with charming and charismatic revelation. They'll come on drunk in the Spirit. They'll come on telling you all these mystical encounters they're having. So you'll immediately think that that's how they live their life. And they'll put out a request for help with all these awesome, grandiose ideas that God told them. And then everybody will fall for it, and they'll be a sucker, and they'll give and they'll sow. And those people behind the scenes will take that money and go and have fun, go and get high, go and just drive around with the price with the price of gas today. Just to go drive around because the Spirit led them to, yet they can't pay their electric, they have no money to pay their rent, and they have children. Think about it. This is behavior that has no common sense. It's almost the same outward behavior is almost the same as fetal alcohol syndrome. You ever meet somebody that has fetal alcohol syndrome? Their eyes are a little bit beadier and farther apart in their head because the mom was an alcoholic while pregnant with the child. And what happens is the child has no common sense. I had a good friend years ago that had this, had no idea at the time that he had this. So of course I'd say, what's wrong with you, man? Why? I mean, we were working at a McDonald's together, and, the bank that you could cash the check at this McDonald's for free. You didn't even have to have an account because it was the same bank, was literally like a 5-minute walk away. And he would get on his bike and ride a mile or two to a bus stop, take the bus all the way across town to a bank where he didn't even have an account that would charge him, I think it was like 5% to cash the check. And I would tell him, why are you doing this, man? No common sense. And so, in working with this, I worked with a couple that was going through this, and it was exactly like that. Now, of course, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. That's why I don't give names. I'm using this as an example of what a lot of people go through. And my heart is to see these people healed. But I can easily overstep, and I can come in and I can become their savior. Okay. And that's the one thing you don't want to do. So you've got to really gauge it. You got to know when to help. You want to look for fruit. And sometimes you're going to have a level of teachableness with these people where it's going to look like they're getting what you're saying, and they're there, and they're just they appear to be very teachable, but they're usually moving in the codependent side at that time. And with the couple that I was ministering to, the wife being codependent, sometimes the husband would come out of that mindset and come to his wife's side. And in that area, they would both be teachable. They would both all of a sudden want to jump on. And yes, we realize we're codependent. We realize we're narcissistic. We want healing. We want to get up. And they get up gun ho, and it would look like they're getting ready to just simply be responsible for their lives. But then right in the middle of it, it would flip. As soon as there would come a trigger, and nope, God just changed his mind again. We're not really here to have family. We're here to get something from you. And once we get it from you, the Spirit just told us it's time for us to go our way, and just separate completely from all support and all family. And this could be devastating to you if you've invested years into these people's lives. You're like, why did I waste my time? It might make you want to not help anybody else. Where I come from on this is, look, I think this time around, I did wait a little too long. I think I found another part of me that needed to be healed. By trying to heal them, it might heal me, some subconscious stuff. So as I dealt with my own triggers on this, it actually brought me into a whole new place where there were some remnants of a savior complex in me, where I felt responsible to help these people get healed. Now, the moment you feel responsible, you've got an issue with yourself. That's a trigger. That's a lie. You're not responsible for anybody else's well-being or healing. Now, you are responsible to be cordial, to be loving, to be honorable, but you're not responsible to save people. We can help people. We can example that help, but you cannot help somebody by doing the work for them. And that's what I found out. We started opening doors for them. Here's some job opportunities. Here's a home. Here you go. And that actually justified the mindset that made them feel superior, that anybody decided to adjust them and say, well, we noticed that, there's been all these job offers, but you haven't taken any and your rent's due. What are you going to do about that? Brother, I don't need counsel in this season. The Father's telling me that I need to just pull back. I need to hear from God personally. That's controlling and manipulation for you to call me on my lack of being practical in my life and my laziness and my irresponsibility. That's not right for you to do that, and so I realized, what? It wasn't right. What I was doing is I was trying to help them bypass consequences. And what I realize now is the best thing you can do for somebody who is codependent and narcissistic is to let them go through it. I had to go through it. Now, it doesn't mean you abandon them. It just simply means there's a time where, now's not the time for us to connect. I'm going to bless you on your way. And we're just going to, I'll see you when I see you. And it might take a couple of years before they realize that they couldn't get anybody to help them stay in that mindset by meeting all their needs, making it all about them, or being codependent just like them, to go and do all the work for them. And so you're going to have to find a balance of when to implement a level of instruction, counsel, and this is what I found for me. Come on down. Here's an opportunity for this, this, and this. Jump on board, and as you're consistent in this, I'll be happy to begin to help you as you're consistent. And so that's what you want to do. You don't want to rescue anybody out of their pain. You want them to face their pain, so they need to feel their pain. You don't want to rescue anybody out of their situation that they got themselves into out of a narcissistic, over spiritualized or hyper spiritual mentality. You want to let them endure the reaping process that, wow, I actually didn't hear from God, and God isn't going to bail me out of what I proclaimed was God. This just sounds like tough love, but it's actually the only way to starve that mindset. Is as long as those mindsets are being praised, as long as there's signs and wonders confirming God is justifying that behavior through people helping them or over helping them, then they will stay in it. But if every time they are narcissistic or codependent, they hit a wall, get slapped, and there's a consequence, eventually they're going to say, you know what? I don't think this is God. This doesn't feel good. And they're going to have to face the lies they believed about themselves as children, the trauma that was put on them as children, so that they can begin to actually come out of that and come into a healthy place of being responsible for themselves and interacting in a healthy way in their marriage. Does that make sense? Does that? Because I know for me, I had a lot of, when I would find a wife, when I was narcissistic and I was out looking for a wife, and I've had several marriages in my life. I've been married. A lot of people don't know this, but I have posted generally, but I'm just going to tell you exactly the uncensored version. I had 5 marriages in 10 years. As a preacher, in my flipping back and forth of codependency and narcissism. All right. And I couldn't last more than a year to a year and a half in each relationship. And once that relationship was over, whether I chose it or they chose it, and it's about even there, I would immediately be with another woman who would then serve the divorce papers to the previous wife. I'd go out, find me a new woman immediately, and God's called us together. Why? Because if I didn't, I'd have to face the lies of abandonment. I would have to face the rejection. And I had so much scripture caked on me through my perfectionist mentality, because I didn't believe I could measure up subconsciously. So I was so good at putting on a show outwardly and manipulating myself and others that I couldn't even see that I had loneliness. All I could see was, this wife was a Jezebel. She came against my anointing. I'm utilizing my spiritual warfare tools that the narcissistic church taught me. And through that, I am going to get rid of that Jezebel, or I'm going to, be narcissistic enough to her that she leaves the relationship. And then that would be justified. Well, let the unbeliever depart. And then I'd meet somebody else. And of course, I would immediately fall in love because of my lack of affirmation and lack of understanding love. And guess what would happen? I'm hearing from the Spirit. This is to be my wife. And guess what would happen around me? I'd get signs and wonders. Everywhere I look, there'd be a sign or a wonder confirming it. Why? Because Ezekiel says, in the book of Ezekiel, it says, God will answer you according to the idols of your heart. And guess what else happened? All the accurate prophets out there would come and confirm this is the one. So it was being justified, not just in my own mind, but by all of Christianity in my life at that time. And what's crazy about that is, why was it being justified? Because most of the prophetic out there can only prophesy what the person wants, not actually what's in God's heart. And that's because most of the prophets only discern their own prophetic calling out of what they want rather than the heart of God. Okay? And so there needs to be a lot of work in what we've dealt with the charismatic jinxes of narcissistic giftings and anointings, or shall I say gifts and anointings that are tailored through narcissism. And that's where we get all of our judgment prophecies and all of our God's going to punish you and all of that. Okay. And so I had to walk through this, right? And so now some people might ask, well, brother, how do we know the cycle is broken? Well, the only way to know is to kind of look at my life now. And I am married for 14 years. I have 2 beautiful boys. My wife loves me and she doesn't put up with my crap. So that'll give you a clue right here. She doesn't put up with my crap. I don't put up with her crap, and we're still together and we're in unity. So that tells you that there's healthy boundaries in which we do call each other on each other's crap, but from a place of taking account for our own stuff. Okay. And so there's healthy ways in which we do it. I'm not the welcome mat to my wife. If she says or does something that I believe is dishonorable, I don't sit under that. If I'm triggered, I go to my place. I deal with the inward belief about myself. And then I come and I confront her and I said, that wasn't cool. You need to be accountable for your behavior. Now, depending on, right now it's pretty instant, but back in the day, well, in the beginning of our marriage, she'd then, want to put up a wall of, the gaslighting response. Well, that's not my problem. That's your trigger. Okay. And I would do the same to her. But what we've realized is it's okay to be accountable, even if it is somebody else's trigger. We still got to be accountable to how we treat one another. So it can't be this one-sided thing where you use your counseling to manipulate each other. Well, don't forget what the counselor said. He said the wives need to submit to their husbands. You see how that becomes gaslighting and invalidating what somebody else is wanting to share of what they're going through and wanting a level of accountability and, hey, respect, boundaries. So we need to hear each other, but we also need to acknowledge where there's triggers and level both of those out so that everything flows smoothly. Do my wife and I still argue? Sure we do. I think it's important to argue. If you don't have any fights in your relationship is dead. Now, that doesn't mean we should be having daily fights, but you should be actually fighting for each other, not against each other. And so many a times what a fight is when it's healthy, it's stuff is surfacing that you thought you dealt with, but you didn't deal with one another, and you're coming together and dealing with it. And if you both get loud and triggered, you also know in your hearts that you have given yourself permission to feel in this moment, knowing that it's really not about the other person, it's about yourself. So if you can do that in a healthy environment, you can fight in a healthy way. And what will happen is you'll now resolve some of these issues that have been swept under the carpet maybe 6 months ago or a year ago when you just kind of let it go and thought you dealt with it, but then it keeps popping up. That's healthy fighting, and guaranteed we always miss something that we need to, again, rediscover, return to, and consider the matter. We're working with about discerning 1% of reality and about 3.5% of our subconscious. So don't think you're going to get it right the first time. Okay. We're going to have to revisit some of these areas of our life and say, okay, yep, the Father did this, and this, but oh, I can see here it needs to be fine-tuned. There's a couple things I didn't see. But what's great about it, when you revisit some of those places, you're also going to find that you're in a season in the moment that matches up with that. So it's almost like God gives it to you in increments, so you're not overwhelmed by it. Okay. So let me kind of wrap this up here. When you try to justify your pain, and this isn't just narcissistic behavior or codependent behavior, and those two tend to want to come together for one to get what they want from the other, because the other wants to serve to prove they're worthy of being loved, and the other one wants to get what they want from others so that they can prove they're worthy to be loved. It's the same lie behind it, but different situations in the past that caused them to operate from different ways of expressing it. If you're narcissistic and everybody has a level of it based on your woundedness, it's you as an adult that might be intellectually intelligent, but your emotional growth is stunted at 4 or 5 years of age. And so when you don't get what you want, you throw a tantrum. Okay. A tantrum can also be seen as when God isn't delivering me out of a situation, I begin to intercede and decree and cry out. Realize that could also be narcissistic behavior. So I want you to kind of match up some of the spiritual things we do, with that are actually clues that it's actually narcissism and not being led by the Spirit. If you are in a situation where you just can't listen to anybody else and it's just you and God, but you have a track record of everything backfiring and you don't have any proof of fruit or sustained fruit that has proven any success in the way in which you've implemented your spirituality, but you're determined to do it by yourself, you are operating in a narcissistic belief system, and everything you are hearing that the Spirit is telling you to do is not the Spirit telling you to do it. It is a religious mindset trying to prove itself so you don't have to face the pain of the lies that you believed about yourself as a child. Okay. And so it's time to take the label. And this is what I would encourage you to do. Stop attributing to God leading you into situations of self-sabotage. God isn't going to tell you to do one thing and then change his mind. That's double-mindedness. That would be serving a double-minded God. God is going to give you a direction to go that's going to expose the lies you believed about yourself and to put you in a position to actually become responsible and face yourself so that you can apply truth in your natural life, so that you can have a good marriage, so that you can raise your kids with integrity and love, so that you can be consistent and not be broke and going around trying to steal people's money from them when they're already struggling. When you come into a situation and you're just there to get something, but you put on the facade that it's all about relationship, and then you hightail it out of there because somebody called you on your crap and you can't handle it, guess what you are? You are a user, whether you meant to do it or not. And when you're a user of others, you eventually burn enough bridges to where nobody believes you, nobody's going to trust you, nobody's going to give you anything. And when you do get free, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to now prove that you're free, because all that time you've been claiming freedom, but it's been a facade of religion, so you don't have to face your pain. And that pain is going to be lived out in usury of others. That's going to prove you can't be trusted. Okay. Now that's a hard place to be. And I know a lot of people, including myself, who have been through that. Can I tell you, from the time my cycle began to change and I was still broken, I met Shauna, I had a level of healing before Shauna. With each relationship, there was a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. but I hadn't really come to the full, understanding of what it was. I still was isolating different emotions and healing them, but I wasn't seeing the whole mindset, the stronghold, the cultural mindset I had created through all of these different lies. Okay. So it wasn't until I was with Shauna, and the first year was hell. And it was at the end of the first year when I began to go into a deeper place of restoration and restitution being made to people of my past, calling them, apologizing, asking for forgiveness to pastors, making restitution, not trying to build relationship with them, releasing them and just letting them know I was on my journey to recovery and restoration. That I talked to the Father and I said, Father, and I knew I was going to do ministry. I knew that I would still be ministering, but this is what I asked God, because there's nothing wrong with ministering where you're at, as long as you're aware of where you're not at. Don't try to jump in where you're not at, because all the issues that you're still dealing with are going to come in as superiority, as denial, as, all of that. So with where I could flow in the things I was free from, I stayed faithful in. But I said to God, God, keep me hidden and don't let my ministry get big. Don't let it explode, and don't let too many people into my life for at least 10 years. I want 10 years of faithfulness to my wife, 10 years of being a good father and being consistent. And do you know what? I forgot about that whole thing. And I want to say about 3 years later, a move of God broke out. Okay, but it wouldn't grow past like 20 people. And then it kind of got closed down. And I'm like, God, why didn't you let this move grow? No answer. Do you know it wasn't until the end of 10 years when we launched out in 2018? I had been doing ministry online. I had done a little work here, a little work there, but it never really grew into anything. And I said to Father, I said, now's the time. Okay, God. We launched out, and I think we had launched out about 2 months. And that is when the Father brought to my remembrance. He says, it's been 10 years, son. I was faithful, and I kept you to your word. And I'm so thankful that the Father kept me to my word. And he made sure that we worked out this stuff in private. Now, when we launched out, I was still in levels of duality. I'll be perfectly honest. I still believed in the hell. I still believed in the demonic. It wasn't long after that I began to meet groups of people that had fruit and had this revelation, and I struggled with it. I fought it for a bit, but then I just simply began to research and look within, and I began to see the fruit immediately emerge, and I crossed over and came into another whole unveiling of my identity. And it's going to be ongoing. So don't be hard on yourself if you have a little bit of that stuff left. Be aware of it and realize that you need to put yourself in a position to where anytime you feel the urge to be codependent or narcissistic, that you put yourself in a place to get slapped. Let it get slapped right out of you. Let there be consequences. Don't justify it. Don't protect it. Don't put a spiritual facade over it. Put yourself in a position to where you can't operate in that mindset by putting yourself around people that love you and believe in you and are willing to tell you the truth. But if they tell you the truth, then, well, the Spirit has told me that I just need to hear from God. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to say no to truth, and you're going to say yes to continuing to go around the same mountain of defeat and cycles of destruction, and you're going to have to learn as the fool learns. Okay, Proverbs says the fool learns by experience, while the wise learns by instruction. If you can't hear instruction, you're going to have to learn by experience. That was my life. And me as a fool of Christ, willing to say I'm a fool, am throwing out some instruction to say, don't follow my example. Don't take the hard road. There is a shortcut, and it actually is called submission to authority. And a lot of people don't like to hear that word, especially those that have come out of religion because authority has been the point of contact to abuse people. And I completely understand that. And guess why we were attracted to abusive authority? Because we were codependent. And why is it that we want to reject true authority? Because we're narcissistic. So there is a place of authority that we need, specifically in the beginning. I'm not saying that, like, I don't submit to authority like I go to a pastor every week and tell him all my problems, and he gives me advice to tell me what to do. I'm not talking about that. But in the beginning, you might need that. You might need that in the beginning. But yet at the same time, my wife just got here. Yet at the same time, as you deal with the ego, as you allow authority to kind of show you, no, brother, that's ego. That's you trying to justify your wounds. As somebody calls you on it and you submit and say, okay, you know what? I can't see me. That's why I'm in this cycle. I'm going to let other people help me through it. As you trust the Father with other people's counsel, you got to realize, quit thinking about, well, I've got to trust this person. That's just a human. No, you're actually trusting God is big enough to direct you through family in those places. That eventually, as you get healed from that, guess what's going to happen? You are going to now graduate from the need to have people tell you what to do, and you're going to walk alongside them in a co-accountable submission with one another. Because now you're like, yeah, man, thanks for walking with me, brother. Thanks for, pastor, whatever, you walked with me through it. You were willing. You didn't just tell me what I needed to do, or else you walked with me. There's trust there. You've been consistent, so therefore I really should take your advice. I see your marriage. I see your life. I see what you've been going through in the sense of how you've been operating and getting success. I think I'll do the same thing. I think there's enough fruit on your tree that now proves that what you're saying has truth. But if you can't hang with that, then you're going to have to learn by experience. And when you learn by experience, you're also going to have to go through a period of time in which people are going to want to see the proof that you truly are healed, you truly are honest, and you truly are trustworthy. And that could take another decade before you begin to have real relationships and step into the ministry that you had in the beginning when you were using your ministry as a facade to run from your own pain. So I hope this message has blessed you. I hope that you've gained some understanding out of it. Please like and share. This will be added to as a bonus video to our Shift Basic Training, because I believe it is vitally important for us to get the right lenses and get the tools that are going to help us step into who we truly are. Amen. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.